Okay, lovely. Bore da pawb a croeso. So welcome this morning to the Economy, Residents and Community Scrutiny Committee. Today is Thursday, the 6th of November. We've got with us members of the committee, and we have many officers and directors and portfolio holders with us as well today. So the first item on our agenda is to receive any apologies for this meeting.
Good morning. So you have apologies from committee members, County Councillor Brian Davis, County Councillor Chloe Masefield and County Councillor Liz Reinenberg, and from Officer Jane Thomas.
Lovely, thank you. I should have said that I'm Councillor Angela Davis and I'm the chair of this committee. And I'd like to just spend a minute to welcome Councillor Sian Cox, who's new on our committee, and this is her first meeting. So thank you for joining us, Sian, and welcome today. So the second item on our agenda is to any disclosures of interest. So this is to receive disclosures of interest by members related to items to be considered at the meeting. Members, if you've got any disclosures, put a hand up. No. Excellent, thank you very much. And item 3 is declarations of interest of declarations of party whips. To receive disclosures of prohibited party whips which a member has been given in relation to the meeting in accordance with section 78(3) of the Local Government Measure 2011. And again, members, any disclosures? Hand up, please. So again, no. Thank you. Thank you very much. Item 4 on our agenda is the minutes. Now, we've had a little bit of a blip in the system, and we've got before us the minutes from our meeting of the 4th of September, which in fact we've already accepted and approved. The minutes that were due today were from our meeting of the 2nd of October, so we will go through them in our next meeting on the 17th of December. So apologies for that. The next item then on our agenda is to look at our work programme, members. So item 5 there on the agenda. So we've got the next 3 meetings highlighted for us there. The 17th of December, as I say there, we've got the Rural Enterprise Policy. And I just want to check with the directors and officers that this is still on track to come to us in December. Who would that be? Would that be Gwilym Davis? Morning, Gwilym.
Morning, Chair. It is on track for that date. But what I would state is we're currently considering the consultation response, and it all depends on the consideration of that response, whether further time is needed to consider and appropriately rewrite the policy. So it is a moving piece, but I will keep yourself informed as chair and the vice chair.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll keep a track of that. Yeah, lovely, thank you. So the other items on the agenda then for December, January and February are all referring to the budget. So we'll have, first of all, our draft impact assessments in December. In January, we'll be looking at the budget lines for this committee, and then in February an alternative budget if one is presented. So anybody got any comments they'd like to make at this stage about the work programme? No? Okay, lovely. So probably in the new year we need to have a little discussion as a committee for items we would like to bring or would like to see brought to the committee. But like I say, we'll do that in the new year. So thank you. Moving on then to item 6, and that's the strategic sites for economic development. And I believe we've got Dan here coming to present this for us, Daniel Burgess. But Councillor Glynn, did you want to do an introduction?
Yeah, I suppose just to say that this is the sort of second presentation that's been brought forward to ERC in recent months, which relates to the development of our strategic economic framework. So really this is an opportunity for us to listen to you as a committee to see whether you've got any ideas and to give us feedback on where we are, I suppose. So yes, I suppose I'll hand over to Dan to take us through that presentation, if that's okay, Chair. Diolch yn fawr.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Glynn. Okay, Dan, we're in your hands.
Great.
Are you having trouble with your camera?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I am here, but for whatever reason, the Zoom camera is telling me unable to find this thing. My camera's not powered or connected. It absolutely is. So I'm sorry about this. You just have my voice from the ether. I hope that's okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I am saying you have had this slide pack, everyone. So without further ado, I'll proceed to take you through that pack, if I may. So yeah, so thank you, Jen, and thank you, Councillor Preston, actually, for setting the scene there. Really, essentially, today is a chance for us to really ask for your views and guidance, essentially, on how we address the strategic areas for economic growth in Powys that around the needs-led and the business-ready element of our property portfolio and our development. Just for some clarification, needs-led is referring to where quite often we do recognise some heat in the market where there is significant submissions into us here at Powys and into Welsh Government in terms of property. So this is property from companies either looking to expand, looking to relocate, looking to grow, all here in Powys essentially, and how us as a local authority can align our aspirations around the programs we have access to, but also in terms of the LDP. Are we doing everything we can to really attract that growth? And of course, by attracting growth, you're tackling poverty, you're increasing standard of living, you bring that high quality employment in. You know, I always reflect back when Laura Ashley closed in Newtown, there was some significantly large units there made available. And there was concern actually with those units find a home, and the reality was we were inundated with inquiries for those units. Actually, that there, as an example, Newtown is somewhere there's very much a need for that commercial property. Whether those rents that can be produced from those properties are on a par with other parts of the UK, of course, that's something else. But by attracting those stronger companies, that will all help to drive economic growth. So essentially, I'm here today at Scrutiny to discuss the purpose and background, the methodology and principles for identifying growth opportunity areas. And I should just say
so Dan, should I just interrupt there, just to tell members we're on page 26 of the pack that is titled Purpose and Background, just so that we can follow where you're up to in the pack. Yeah, now I know it's tricky for you if you're the IT's letting you down.
Yeah, every time I go to the next slide, I'll mention the page number. So it's
lovely.
Great. Okay, so as the chair said there, so page 26. The purpose of this is around the methodology and principles for identifying growth opportunity areas. And what that means actually, are we focusing, perhaps our focus too narrow? Do we need to consider those wider industries as well? How it aligns with the needs base, as I said, around the businesses and communities, and also crucially aligns to our corporate plan, growing mid Wales where the funding is often available, and the future Wales, and also I should probably say as well the Future Generations Act as well. And it includes affordability considerations to support local economic participation. I'd love to be able to say that we have the access to capital for significant infrastructure, and we do via the growth deal, but obviously need to manage that budget accordingly. So moving on to page 27, why a needs-based approach? It's be flexible, responding to local regional demand, encourages that community and business collaboration, identifies opportunity areas rather than locking in sites. So as I was saying there, Newtown is an example given, but that's only one of our communities. We have many communities actually have an economic need, and how we as an organisation, as a council, address those and support affordable, realistic investment opportunities. So the strategic framework on page 28. So essentially it's a multi-criteria assessment to identify areas of strategic opportunity. So spatial accessibility, of course, on the side of a very steep hill, that there may be a need in the community, but actually, is it financially viable? The economic and sectoral alignment, are those sectors growth sectors? Are they sectors we want to see grow and support here in Powys? Infrastructure, of course, and this is a fundamental element of this. Energy, it's a massive topic here for us right now. And of course, the environmental and planning, as I mentioned with the LDP. But it is that social, community and affordability considerations. So land, workspace, and workforce. You know, the old days of economic modelling used to be, you know, it was around land, labour and lolly. That was a sort of the 3 L's we used to work to, but obviously as times have moved on in terms of funding and in terms of demographic as well. So page 29 there. So evidence and stakeholder input, obviously quantitative. So national statistics, Welsh Government, transport, digital infrastructure, NRW, of course, with the floodplain, and qualitative, council departments, communities. What do we recognise as a council actually needs that support to grow? And the workshops and consultation, are we doing enough to engage with those communities to understand those economic needs? And of course, again, I do keep mentioning this, but affordability. Standards for building are increasing around the needs to reduce the carbon footprint of those buildings and ensure they're climate proof and future proofing their use. But of course, there's a cost attached to that. You know, if you're looking at £150 a foot to develop, it's going to take quite some time to get that back, as an example. So, okay, move on to page 30. So the current context. So just as a snapshot of where we are at the moment. So in terms of where we have got a developed pipeline of projects, with Newtown, as I mentioned, with the Cymru Tech site there, Four Crosses, Ardlyn, Hay on Wye. And we are in discussions with a number of other sites currently on that, around the early opportunities and just what is the art of the possible, essentially. But what I'd like to see coming forward is it highlights corridors and clusters for potential growth, not site selection. Are we just going for the low-hanging fruit? Are we not actually taking the time to consider what is in the best interests of some of our smaller communities? And again, those areas must be assessed then for viability, connectivity, and affordability. You know, I think if you're in the West Midlands, you know, you build it, they will come. Essentially, mentality works, and that does work in parts of Powys, but not everywhere. Essentially. So move on to page 31. So there are some emerging themes, as I mentioned there. So it's that corridor-based growth, the cluster developments, so renewables, agri-food and tourism, and also the digital infrastructure. You know, the need these days for significant connectivity around 5G, AI, etc. We have to make sure what we do is resilient to changes and evolution of our industries. And again, market town revitalization, something we do a lot through placemaking with Newtown, Brecon, Welshpool, just examples where we've got projects currently live there. And again, it gives that business that there's confidence. I'll come on to that shortly, but we do have a number of live projects via the growth deal currently, which is directly supporting companies. And it gives those companies just that comfort, that security to know that actually there is financial support for them to grow here in Powys. And again, I keep coming back to this affordability. It's all good while having aspirations, but actually if the sums don't add up, then it's time to move on, essentially. So as I was saying, on page 32 there, so we do currently have the Mid Wales Commercial Property Fund, which invited businesses showing confidence to expand. So we had a number of companies come forward, and you can see them there on page 32. And Mid Wales Growth Deal also then up to £23 million available for Newtown development, which of course is the Advanced Manufacturing Centre, or Cymru Tech, as we're referring to the project now. So that's just an example there. Some of those projects that have been successful in applying to go to the next round now for some funding. And I should say we are exploring a second round of that as well, given the strength of that. So moving on to page 33 quickly. Again, refine the framework and validate criteria. The needs and affordability assessment workshops, again, coming back to actually what is the art of the possible, and map those potential opportunity areas. There may well be opportunities that as officials aren't party to, that you have access to. We'd like to hear from you, really, and integrate that into our LDP review as well. So moving to page 34 quickly, balancing strategic and local needs. Framework needs to be transparent and comprehensive, and align growth with sustainability, affordability and community well-being. And that role of stakeholder engagement is absolutely critical. So I think on that point, Chair, I'll hand over to any questions. And again, apologies for my lack of camera today.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Dan. So over to the committee. Questions, and Councillor Sian is first with a hand up. Welcome, Sian, and over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, everybody. Hello, Dan. Thank you for that. What you on page 29, the slide that was titled "Evidence and Stakeholder Input," you said, "Are we doing enough to engage communities, and that was the last thing you said at the end of your presentation there. I really like that has been highlighted as a really key priority, that I think you said it was vital, didn't you? Community and stakeholder engagement. So my question is, are we doing enough to engage communities? And if so, what are we doing? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, it's a very, very good question. And actually, I think sometimes we do consult, and actually, is that consultation targeted enough? Would be my view on that. A good example is when we had the Cymru Tech workshop in Newtown. I think we had over 90 businesses attend, which is absolutely fantastic. That's targeted consultation, hearing from those companies who have as awful expression, but skin in the game in terms of economic growth within our communities, in terms of employment, in terms of their workforce planning, etc. So I think there is a real need to consult and engage. But as I was saying, I think it's really a case that I think generic consultation quite often, whilst is aligned to the policies in place, having time to make that detailed and more targeted is hugely beneficial.
Councillor Sean, does that answer your question?
Just a quick little extra, if you'll indulge me. So that was targeted for specific subjects, I take it. So targeted. That was a targeted an example of a targeted consultation. And was that an event, or was that, you know, an online input from those businesses?
That was actually a targeted event. So that was an in-person. So we had a good 3 hours, a number of speakers coming along to speak to those companies. And I think another good example of this is, whilst it's not essentially linked to property per se, but whereas that one was, for example, tourism engagement with the Offers Dyke, for example, we're hosting an event now in late November down in Hay-on-Wye, and again, I suspect that'll be well represented with people who have a real interest in that, as opposed to a passing thought on it. You know, there's livelihoods linked to some of this consultation. It's absolutely fundamental that we get that targeting done correctly.
Okay, and that involves actually going out with the information to specific groups of people or specific businesses and encouraging them and making sure. Somebody told me once, if you want people to remember something, you've got to tell them 3 times in 3 different ways. Is that what you do?
Oh, at least.
Thank you,
so
Dan.
Can I check on that? When you say targeted, do you mean those individual businesses have been invited, or do you mean that industry has been invited by, I don't know, Facebook or through their?
Yeah, no. We're lucky actually in the economy team, Chair. We do have a very detailed database of several hundred companies, if not thousands of companies, who some of them may not even be based in Powys, but have in the past expressed an interest in some of our projects and some of our undertakings. So we do have a database, and by agreeing to be on our database with GDPR regulations, we're in a position where we can contact those. So obviously, as long as we don't bombard them, but actually, when we see something coming up that is of real significance, we do that. And there is a wider conversation around economic engagement, and I do think as a council, we're moving more and more towards that greater engagement really with those communities, because ultimately we need their input on how our policies are taken forward in the future.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Gary. You're next.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Matt. Just a couple of points to sort of note, but not for questions, and then one question perhaps. So just when we're talking about corridors, I would assume we also include the other major 8 road arteries, the 470 running through the middle and the A40 running across the sort of southern half of Powys as well. They're obviously major transport links, but I guess my point around those would be I would hope one of our criteria is around transport integration. We know it's something we're trying to work closely with our communities, but if we're building new sites or increasing the size of sites, people have got to get there, and the more sustainable ways they could get there should be an important factor where we can. So that's rail and bus networks and times of both. So that was just a point to note. And LDP, just we know that sort of time is running out on the LDP new plan, if you like, and due to be hopefully put forward early next quarter. So there's probably a bit of urgency if we need to do anything strategic in the LDP documentation to make sure it does land in there. So that's just clocking that tight time frame for LDP landing, hopefully early next year. But one question I had was around, my understanding is we own and operate a number of sort of, let's say, the smaller workshop units, which are really good occupancy, those starter units, and ideally move on into progression. But in terms of the sort of more medium and large ones, we don't physically ourselves own many, I think. Abermule is one I know of, but there's possibly others there. But I guess the question then is, how do we work with those other partners that do, be that Welsh Government, private sector, and things like that, to sort of, don't know, I assume our role is part broker in saying there's a demand and a need. And if I know there's not a lot of availability within those medium to larger sites, so it is about potentially site creation or adaptation of some, but I guess I'm just going to reference Llanidloes has a couple of enterprise parks, and it has one with empty space, so it has bare ground within it. And if we know that, let's say, Newtown or Rhayader, for instance, was full and at capacity, then Llanidloes isn't a particularly far journey from those other towns. So how do we do that sort of nudge along? Carno would be another good example, in my opinion, where we have that legacy of Lower Ashley, huge industrial units at very little use at the moment. And just wondering, how does the team potentially get involved in that sort of negotiations or support to businesses? Dan?
And just to clarify, Gary, Councillor Gary, when you're talking we, you're talking the council.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we. Yes. Yeah. We.
Not some organisation or company you're involved in. No, we're talking about the council-owned units that are let out. Yeah, just thought that was worth making that clear.
Thank you.
Daniel. So good questions there from Councillor Gary.
Shall I just come in first, please, Chair? Is that okay?
Please do, Councillor Glynn.
To Daniel for some more detail, but it's just a point to make. So sorry, and then speaking as the board member for Llanidloes, I mean, one of the challenges is that, you know, historically at least, the market has not been quite as hot as, say, Newtown for some of those industrial premises. So there's a balance to be struck there between yes, ensuring that our, you know, economic gain is sort of equitably distributed, but also making sure that we're making a sound return on investment as well, if we're the people engaging in development of business units. And with regards to liaison with say Welsh Government owned business premises or privately owned business premises, I know that our team do a huge amount of work with sites and premises, and as Dan mentioned, there's quite a comprehensive CRM system for sort of logging these queries that come in from businesses. So there is a sort of database, and we're hopefully able to signpost people in an appropriate manner. I don't know whether, Dan, you've got any further comments on that, or indeed the LDP issue.
Thank you, Councillor Preston. Yeah, no, just to second what you're saying, essentially, that's right. But we do have a very good relationship with our partners, and actually, those bigger units, as you mentioned there, Councillor Mitchell, it is a frustration of ours at times that actually we aren't always competing on a level playing field when it comes to be able to attract those inward investors, those companies who are looking to expand and grow in the UK. And also our own local companies as well. So that's really where we're targeting the growth deal currently, is to bring those units online. And I'm sure you've heard with the Cymru Tech proposal in Newtown, for example, that there'll be several large units built there to accommodate those businesses, I'm pleased to say. But Councillor Preston's spot on, really. Like you say, it's just how that intelligence and identifying those areas where we do need to look into that granular detail, really, on what are the barriers to those sites being utilised ASAP.
Thank you.
Sorry, pardon me, Chair. Can I add one further
yes, please do.
Sort of point back to Councillor Mitchell? I know it wasn't a sort of direct question as such, but I think it is an important point that you raised about transport integration. And I know that historically it has been very, very difficult to get our two transport systems aligned, i.e. bus and rail, our two main public transport systems aligned. It's hoped, I suppose, that now that Transport for Wales is coming in-house with Welsh Government, and we're moving to a different model, that hopefully that transport integration will be more difficult. But it won't surprise Councillor Mitchell for me to say that actually rail is pretty poor, and we've been battling to get a fully 1 hourly service across the Cambrian line for a long time, and I know that he's supportive of that, as am I. And there are some of those factors that are sort of outside our control, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say when it comes to public transport integration. Sorry if that was a bit of a garbled answer.
Thank you for that. So I'm just thinking, really, in response to that, Councillor Glynn, you're talking about areas where there may be vacant units. You use Lanny as the example, but there are probably others across the council. And I understand that maybe the past or current trends don't require a unit of that size in that place. But I'm just wondering, what work have we done to try and map out potential future use, for those industries that perhaps haven't even been invented yet? I mean, have we thought about the different types of employment or practices that could be carried out in areas where perhaps it was less attractive previously because of transport? So I'm thinking sort of ITs and energy stuff I don't understand, but there's modern ways of working now that don't require those traditional transports or perhaps locations that they did previously. So what work can we do to prepare our towns for that?
I think that's a really fair comment, and I think this is what this piece of work that Daniel is come to present to you today is all about, really. That there are some other barriers in the two examples that you mentioned, Councillor Angela. I mean, for instance, grid infrastructure is a key challenge for us in Mid Wales, isn't it? As is digital connectivity as well. Yeah. But I suppose to respond, this is absolutely the piece of work that's taking place now, and we heard Daniel talk about some of those potential growth sectors, particularly around sort of green tourism, around digital infrastructure. I don't know whether you've got anything further to add, Daniel, on that point.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor, and thank you, Chair, for the question. You're spot on, really. It is an element of the last thing we want to do is invest significantly in some units that then sit empty because actually they're not delivering what our community needs. So this is why the targeted business engagement is absolutely fundamental, and that those 90 companies attending from across Powys, that one event as an example. And I think we as a team would like to do more of that engagement with those business communities to understand what those barriers are. But also, this comes up to it's a UK level. There's inquiries coming in on a daily basis into the UK government that are then dispersed down to Welsh Government. Are we positioning Powys in that space to capture those really important projects? Just an example, think of data centers. They're energy hungry, they're water hungry. Well, how are we aligning our aspirations to those projects of that scale and the community benefits that can come out of those projects? So again, this is the start of the exercise essentially, really, and we will be doing some real deep dives into this and mapping out those future industries. And just the strength of robotics in the Severn Valley alone is phenomenal, really. Quite often it's just off the radar. So, but whilst we talk about the future industries, of course, fundamentally we mustn't forget the food industry as well, which is the backbone of our economy. So those distribution centres for local produce, the supporting, we've seen some of the food processing plants close in recent times, and actually we shouldn't be forgetting that those sort of foundational economy elements also.
Yes. Okay, lovely. Yeah, thank you. So, it is important that we sort of do try and look to the future, as difficult as that is. Nobody's got a crystal ball, but yeah, that's good to hear that that's being considered. So thank you for that. Councillor Jackie, I can see you've got your hand up. Did you want to ask a question or make a comment on what you've heard?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to make a comment if that's okay. And it's in response really to Councillor Glynn's sense of importance around transport and this economic strategy as well, and economic growth. And just to say that we have recently had the regional transport plan approved by Welsh Government and actually highly praised by the Minister as well. He felt it was a really good plan for the region. So that includes Powys and Ceredigion, which is incredibly important to any kind of economic structure that we want to put in place and strategic plan for growth. But that is very much part of what we're trying to achieve through the regional transport plan. And I know, Councillor Glynn, that you'll be invited for the first time to the CJC, and I know, Councillor Angela, you've been there as well. But I think we really need to make sure that we closely align those two areas, because it is incredibly important. And there has been lots of discussion about how we can improve the train network to perhaps look at things like movement of goods rather than just movement of people, which is all we can do at the moment, and see how we can improve on that, and perhaps also improve the structures, the regional structures for lorries and other transport across the area. So I think the two things are really important to align, and I'm really grateful to Councillor Glynn for bringing that forward. So it's not just about public transport, it's about all the transport networks that we need to improve. Thank you. Thank you for letting me say that.
Yeah, no, completely agree with you, and thank you for those comments. Councillor Peter James.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question to Dan, really. The work units we're talking about that are out there at the moment, are they owned by Powys or are they stakeholder units? And because going back through history, a lot of these work units were put in by the WDA, and I know for a fact some of those units have been sold off, and that land now, or the units, have been earmarked for private housing elements. So can you just enlighten me who actually owns the actual work units we're talking about, and are they stakeholder owned?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, happy to come back on that question. It's a very astute observation. Ironically, there was obviously back in the days of WDA last century, there was a real drive on growth here in Mid Wales, with properties being built, and some of those were built with a payback or option to buy after 25 years or 10 years or whatever. Really, there's a blend. So the honest answer at the moment is our aspiration is very much to keep as much in-house as possible, given the revenue that will generate for us in terms of rent, to contribute towards our economic aspirations here in Powys. The reality may be that we haven't got the capital to build out all the sites that may come forward that are suitable. So there may be a blend essentially proposed, and obviously this would have to be done by the LDP and appropriate planning and the appropriate authorization. So it's heavily caveated, but I do envisage a framework essentially of different levels of build proposed by us in the future going forward, that would include some sites that we keep retention of due to the income that would generate for us, which is critical, as well as some of those that actually we could possibly, and again, this is nothing set in stone, but just an aspiration, we could get to get the groundworks completed, etc., and then look to sell, to develop other sites accordingly where there is private sector demand. So my answer in short would be it would be a case by case basis and understanding the economics need in that area.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple of questions myself. So going back to Councillor Glynn's point about the location of potential units, I'm wondering about adaptations and our ability as a councillor to make to repurpose buildings. Really, if we've got vacant buildings in one place, can we repurpose them? And I wonder what work we're doing with, for example, planning, building regulation, other regulation, legislation, bodies, our own policy, to sort of facilitate that. Just thinking, I think, did you say that it's £130,000 per square foot to build a new unit? Dan,
No.
I think, no.
150 £150 a foot is sometimes banded around as a cost to build, depending on the scale of it. So it's
150
pounds per square foot.
per foot. Oh,
Yeah.
right. Oh, per square foot. Yeah.
Yeah.
To build. So, you know, if we could repurpose existing buildings, is that a cheaper way of doing it? And have we looked at that basically?
Gosh, that's a good question, Chair. And I don't want to sound like I'm being a bit vague, but it's often a case by case basis. Sometimes the build quality of some of those, you know, the concrete frames of some of the older buildings, you think, I'll just take a bay out. In reality, when you take a bay out, the structural integrity of those buildings is no longer valid. So it is where appropriate, you know, there's absolutely desire to keep the cost as cheap as possible. But quite often, the reality these days is that sometimes it's cheaper to build new than it is to actually repurpose. Obviously, you know, where we can't do that, we would look to repurpose and invest appropriately, and much as we're doing some of our town centres currently with the placemaking fund, you know, place planning fund that we're using via Welsh Government Town Centre Regeneration, we are repurposing some of those more urban buildings. But
yeah, that's sort of really what I was thinking about. Really, we've heard before, haven't we, about vacant buildings on our high streets, and if they could be repurposed for a different type of business, you know, what influence do we have on that? Because I think we've all got examples where either building control or planning regulations or something is making that difficult to do.
Yeah, that's right, and that's why it is that sort of essentially understanding the scope within that project, whether we actually revisit it and look at an alternative site or look to address it. You know, in terms of the LDP, quite often where sites haven't been developed, it can be seen as a bit of a blocker that actually it makes it difficult to bring additional sites forward. But that's in our gift to challenge really and address that and understand what those blockers are. So this is part of this exercise to understand actually where sites are may not be appropriate, or there's a reason why it's not happened, to understand what's gone wrong and what we can do to bring that back into economic use.
Okay, and I think my final question would be that what can ward councillors do to help their areas on this road to sort of economic recovery or expansion, however we want to call it? Obviously, you've said you've got that very in-depth list of businesses who've expressed an interest, but what about businesses that aren't aware that the support is out there for them, or new businesses, or people who as yet haven't even got a business but might have one in the right circumstances?
Well, can I answer that, Chair, and just say that I think that role is absolutely vital, and I would welcome, and I'm sure Daniel and his team would welcome any contacts or information from your own localities where you think there are opportunities, where you think there are businesses that perhaps haven't engaged historically with the county council, that actually you are critical in making that happen.
Okay, lovely, thank you. Members, any further questions for Daniel or Councillor Glynn? No, well, there we are. You've done a good job then. So, members, have we got any recommendations we'd like to make on this paper? We have been asked to look at the framework and to judge, is it fit for purpose? Is it needs-led, deliverable? And does it align with business, community and funding realities? Ensuring strategic economic growth is achieved responsibly across Powys. So do we feel what we've heard today will help us on that road and that journey? And is there anything else we could recommend that be added to this? Any thoughts? No. I think my sort of recommendation is more of a request, and I certainly would appreciate if some piece of work could be put together, like a crib list that I could sort of share with businesses in my ward. So you know, that slideshow isn't sort of shareable to me. It's not a policy or a document, but is there something that perhaps could be put together to say, this is may be the possible to stimulate that conversation? I don't know, Daniel, or
Yeah, happy to answer that question, Chair. Absolutely, and this is quite often where the signposting to Business Wales, for example, is absolutely key, because
Okay.
Business Wales are out there as a consultancy service free of
Yeah.
charge to work with those companies looking to grow. There's also Mentera from the food business side, and actually understand what those aspirations are. And quite often companies say they're really keen to grow, but that it's an understanding of the cost of that, and where they want to grow and how we can help them with that, essentially. And a classic example is stashed products. They're on starting Abermuir. They've taken over 3 units there now. They've just been successful in applying for some growth funding to grow again. Absolutely critical to try and help them expand and grow in the region. So yeah, that local intelligence is invaluable for us. It really is.
Okay. Councillor Peter. Oh, and then I see Diane's put her hand up as well, but Councillor Peter first. Lewitton.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Sorry, I was just musing again, so apologies if I've gone off at a slight tangent. But I was just wondering, Dan and Councillor Glynn, are we in any conversations with government? Because I guess one of the other big factors behind this is various elements of business taxation, and I think you used the phrase, Dan, build it and they will come, but yeah, they may not necessarily come if the taxation regime isn't right for them. So are we looking at that element of it as well in this?
Are you talking specifically about business rates, Councillor Lewington?
Well, yeah, no, sorry, Councillor again. Yeah. Well, I guess there's business rates. I guess there's wider government taxes like national insurance contributions, so on and so on. But are we taking into account not only Welsh government taxation, but say perhaps UK wider taxation on businesses when we're looking at this and the implications of that?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely something that should be considered, and I'm sure there is work to be done in terms of lobbying government on that. I mean, I know in my own locality, speaking to businesses, the impact that those national insurance rises had on individual small businesses on the high street was pretty huge. So I suppose all I can say, Councillor Lindsay, is that I totally sympathise with what you say. I don't know whether Daniel or Diane have got any further commentary about work done lobbying via WLGA, etc.
Please come in as you, Diane, if you want to.
Yeah, so 2 points to answer Councillor Preston. I don't know of any direct lobbying in that area at the moment, although it's an ongoing consideration, but we could absolutely pull something together. It's a really good recommendation from Scrutiny. And I think the previous recommendation as well, Chair, that you made around making sure that we give the right information out to businesses that can actually provide or send them to the right kind of information is really useful, and I think that would be a really good recommendation as well, that we pull something together, a kind of newsletter or something that can be shared kind of far and wide to
yeah. Yeah, that was it. Sorry, have we lost signal? No, we're there. Yeah, thank you, Diane. Yes, that was my point. If there was something that we could share as members, or the council could share, that we could make a start point from that. So making some notes here of some potential recommendations based on that then. So for members, what do you think that it would be useful, I think, if we could proactively map out potential uses for vacant sites and underused sites, as has been discussed, and consider those industries that may not yet be fully established or might be likely to grow. And then a second one, if we continue and expand the targeted consultations, this is reference to Councillor Sean's comments. Bear with me a second, I'm just reading in our chat here. To ensure the developments meet actual and future needs. and then having some greater alignment between economic development and transport planning, as was discussed there, Councillor Gary and Councillor Jackie mentioned, particularly to support access to new employment sites via sustainable models, if possible. And then Gary's point about the LDP around the need to be ambitious in putting sites forward. So, members, would those be recommendations that you'd be happy to support? And do you have anything else you'd like to add? Councillor Peter Lewington.
Thanks, Chair. I just went off the back of the previous comment. Was do we want to put anything in about liaising with government, lobbying around the taxation as well? And then I guess just again another just slightly musing there is in terms of consultation is would it perhaps be useful to come out and give some sort of presentations to town councils, community councils to get them on board as well?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Peter. I'd got town and community councils in a little circle on my notepad here.
Great minds, yeah.
And yeah, because you know, they are a very useful resource, aren't they, in knowing their local areas. But that was really sort of my thought about if we had some sort of crib sheet. But certainly, I think we could make a recommendation that if town and community councils, I mean, Dan, would you be willing to do talks to town and community councils, either individually or perhaps at the sessions? We have regional sessions, don't we?
Can I respond to that, Chair? Sorry, just in that to say that we do have 110 town and community councils in Powys, which makes it really challenging to do individual sort of talks to groups. But I think there's certainly an opportunity. I feel you'll know that obviously we'll be bringing a paper forward on the new strategic economic framework for Powys, and I think there's certainly an opportunity there to engage town and community councils in that work, be it at the Sustainable Powys sessions, as I think Councillor Lewington is referring to in the chat box. So yes, I think we can certainly take that away. Yeah.
Okay, lovely. And as Councillor Lewington has said, you know, we do have online sessions, and I think a lot of town and community councils now are able to look, you know, to join online. Right, Councillor Peter, you're the last man standing, as it were. So over to you if you've got a final question or recommendation you'd like to add.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just quite interested about the new startup businesses and the right premises to actually let them either grow or start up. You know, some of these premises are very big and it can actually knock them over to their costings. Have we got the right premises to fit the right purpose? Or can we sort of do shared premises to help small businesses or startups start their growth to start off with, if that makes sense?
Shall I come back on that one?
Yeah, please
Chair?
do, Daniel.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, you're spot on. Incubator units is exactly what is in mind. And as an example, the Cymru Tech, that is essentially a big plug and play where companies can come, trial a new product, trial a new technique or something, see if that's working, and actually rather than impacting upon their existing facility, and just actually see if that concept's got legs. But you're right, everything we undertake as part of this project that will ultimately be brought forward for development will be upon recognizing those unique needs of that particular community. So what I don't want to do is say we're going to build 100,000 square foot units for a depot or something at the detriment of some smaller companies, which would employ a lot more people at a higher salary. So it's getting that balance right, really, and what our economic drivers are. So but yeah, that's, you know, the small 500 square foot incubator units are fundamental to SMEs, and they're very much part of our ecosystem.
Can I just follow on with that, really, Dan?
Okay, quickly,
really, and then when you had your engagement with businesses, how many were large businesses and how many were small?
It was
startup?
Yeah, it was a really good mix. I'd probably say 70 were around the sort of medium-sized enterprises. A lot, we also had some smaller ones there as well. Down to essentially the under 10 employees. So that they're all, as part of our evolutive system we use, that engagement is across the board. So that there isn't anyone who, as long as they're engaged with us or contact us in a shape or form, or we're contacting them, it's not, the scalability is there. Ultimately, SMEs are the backbone of our business community. So and they're more resilient quite often to global changes as well. So it's really key that we look after those companies and help them grow.
Thank you, Dan.
And Peter, if members are minded to agree the suggested recommendations, that sort of is covered in a way because we're asking that we proactively map out potential uses for buildings. And as you say, that might mean splitting them up or expanding them or doing something different with them. So members, were you happy with those recommendations as read out? Yeah. Okay, so
Chair, can I just have a show of hands from the committee so I can just make a note, please?
And you're happy for us to leave Gemma to get the wording correct? Yeah, thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you, Gemma. Councillor Peter Lewington, you got your hand up. No, it's gone down.
Sorry, I was slow on the buttons, Chair. Apologies.
No problem at all. Members, I'm being a rush myself through there, my own notes. I just want to take us back to page 19, if I can, which is the questions that were raised in the last meeting. And I know we haven't got the minutes before us. But if we could just have a quick look at we had some questions we put forward to officers for further information, and we've received the answers there. I just want to check, are you happy with those answers? Or given that we haven't got those minutes, we've got opportunity to have an extension on those questions because we've got until the next meeting to get a little bit more answer. So I was preempting Councillor Pete Lewington. So Pete, come in because I'm aware that you do have a little bit of a further question.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's that first question there on page 19 where we asked what were the potential economic costs, and we sort of have got the service response, and I think it does say in there these figures will be confirmed by the end of the financial year. So it was just to ask and request that those figures do come back to committee so as we can see those costs, please.
Lovely. So we've got that now in the minutes, so Gemma can take that further question for us, and then we'll have this paper and go through it in more depth when we have it with the minutes in the next meeting. So lovely, yeah, thank you. And my apologies for that, Councillor Peter, you did highlight it. Okay, we're going to move on now to item 7, which is the impact of delivered savings. And we've got several sort of individual papers all interconnected here. So I don't know who is going to open this up to us. I think we suggested in our pre-meet that the 4 papers within this heading, we'll take them individually. So if we ask an officer or portfolio holder to introduce them, and then we'll take questions at the end of each session. But who would like to introduce the overall paper? Who have we got here today? Because we've got a whole.
I'll give an overall introduction to the papers, Chair, if you like.
Thank you very much, Councillor David.
Yes, as you said, there are a number of reports under this agenda item. There's one on corporate services, economy and climate, community wellbeing, highways, transport, recycling, and planning and regulatory services. So just to outline what's common to all the reports is the purpose and the background, basically. And the purpose of the reports are to provide an overview of the savings delivered and to look at any potential impact on residents, communities or corporate objectives that actually came out of the delivery of those savings. And with regard to some background, I think it's fair to say that members have been asking for some time for additional information around savings delivery over and above what's already been provided within the end of year outturn reports. And Audit Wales when they undertook a financial sustainability review in November 2024. They basically, one of the recommendations of the two recommendations, one of them was referring to exactly that for more information around savings delivery and impacts. So that's the background to the reports. Well, what you'll see in the introduction to the reports at 2.2 is basically an outline of our corporate and strategic equality plan, Stronger, Fairer, Greener, and a reminder of the 3 objectives contained therein. There is an Appendix A to all the reports, and they basically, I think the way that works, if there's a Y, it says that yes, there was an impact, and no, there was no impact against each saving. I think a P actually represents a positive impact. So that's the purpose and the background of the reports, Chair. And I think at this stage, I think if we take the reports in order, and it might be appropriate if the heads of service and portfolio holders actually talk us or add some commentary to the reports, and then we can take questions after each report. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Councillor David. That's really helpful. So we'll move on to the first report, which is the corporate and economy savings. So who would like to lead us through that one? So portfolio holder. No. So is Anne here with us? So, oh, Diane is here. Thank you, Diane.
No problem, Chair. I can definitely pick up on the economy elements for you.
Lovely.
So first of all, so under section 3.5, we have it explains the impact of the savings for the key elements, really. So we've tried to pull out the key savings that went through in that year. So we've got reducing the economy events budget. And so what we were trying to do was utilise grants better rather than using our own revenue funds to support events that, for instance, presence at the Royal Welsh Show and supporting other events that happen across the county. So we have been successful, and so the impact hasn't been in any way negative across the county, and we've still managed to deliver so far everything that we were delivering previously, and have actually managed to expand as well event support across the county by looking at different opportunities. I will have to leave the digital services, finance and corporate for someone from the finance. I'm just trying to see who's here.
Yes. Anne was
I think
with us.
Catherine might be able to, or Anne, sorry, is here as well.
Anne, is there anything you'd like to add there for members on the digital services and finance transformation savings? Is she with us?
Should I just say, Chair, that with regard to the finance and transformation savings, it is basically what it says, that's achieved through processes and removing manual tasks, and partially through the use of the introduction of AI into certain elements of the finance function. And I think, as all members be aware now, is that that there's a new finance system due to be rolled out in, I think it's April of next year, and the significant training going to take place around that, and that's actually going to remove in the future a lot of other manual tasks around the finance function. So basically that's for the future, but on the same sort of strategy, the savings were achieved for 24-25 along those lines. And with the corporate activities, the £500,000 there, that was part of the actuary review around the pension fund, and that's a reduction to budget each year. So there wasn't any impact actually for residents coming out of both those savings.
No, and as you mentioned, Councillor David, the appendix there on page 43 does list all the savings and their impact, positive or negative, and they're all listed there as no impact at all, which obviously is a good thing for residents. There are a couple there, NA, I assume not applicable. Do you want to say anything about that?
I think with the NA, and they could be referring to savings that have been carried forward into 25-26, Yeah, it is actually. If you look at the corporate
Yes.
service for capital funding savings, obviously they weren't achieved because of the stubbornness of interest rates remaining very high. So that's been carried forward. Then there's digital services. There's a saving there of 10,000 that's been carried forward. And those are the two, I think, aren't they? With the NA against
Well,
them. There's another one.
The DBS fees to schools.
The DBS fees again. That's
So I'm guessing on that one, that's like an income coming in because the DBS service does DBSs for others. So would that be how? Is it connected completely with how many DBSs are undertaken? Is that why? Sorry, David, you're on mute if you're talking to us.
Yes, sorry, Chair. Yes, I don't have the detail around that, but yes, with regard to DBS fees, that would refer to income.
Yeah. Okay, I've got a couple of hands up. So Councillor Pete Lewington.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, and thank you for that, Councillor David. I just on the that finance transformation cost saving of 110. I was just trying to understand, maybe just my lack of understanding, is how we actually calculate that figure of 110, because we've said we've reduced manual tasks in there. But if I'm still employed, but I'm not doing a job over there, how have we actually worked out that saved us 110? May just be my lack of understanding, Chair.
Yeah, I don't have the detail exactly around that, but a lot of it refers to the introduction of bots, etc., within the finance function itself, which was removing a lot of manual work. So that in itself would, in all probability, have reduced the actual number of man hours that were actually applied to the function itself. For the exact detail around that, I guess Anne, if Anne was with us, or perhaps Mary could give you the exact detail around it.
Yeah, there we are. Mary's got her hand up.
Yeah.
Mary, are you able to explain that for us?
Morning, everybody. Sorry, I don't know if my camera worked or not. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can just about see you in some ghostly way, but yes, you're there.
Okay. Sorry,
Welcome.
seem to be some demons this morning. Yeah, it's exactly as Councillor David said. It is physically reducing the number of staff within the team, but that is done in a way that's through vacancies. So we physically remove those staffing salaries from the budget, and that's how that's calculated.
Does that answer, Councillor Pete?
Yes, just a slight supplementary, if I could, Chair. So I know it's quite a sensitive subject, but I guess we're saving through either not recruiting or natural wastage. So there isn't anything on the other side of the equation around redundancy costs.
Yeah, that is how it's trying to be managed through, like you said, naturally vacant posts that just aren't recruited to. Lovely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Pete. Councillor Sean.
Thank you, Chair. 3.5 of the report under the digital services reduction says that the reduction in staffing levels has led to a slight increase in workload, which has had a limited impact on the pace at which the service is able to support the delivery of council objectives. And I just wondered which particular council objectives have been impacted. And I know it says a limited impact, but it would still be useful to know what that impact is.
Who can answer that for Councillor Sean?
I don't think there's anybody with us from digital service to give the actual detail around that, Councillor Sean, but I'm sure it's something that can be taken away and we can provide an answer later.
Okay, we'll do that, Councillor Sean. We can ask for an answer to come back. Thank you. Councillor Pete, your hand is up again. No, is that a legacy hand, perhaps?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. The fingers and the buttons aren't working very well this morning. Apologies.
No, the gremlins are in the IT today, aren't they? Councillor Adrian.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask, before we move on, like an overarching question? I've looked at, and some of this is more to do with HCR, but it doesn't matter. I've looked at some of the impact assessments and then the outcomes of cost savings, and they do reflect, they are accurate to mostly. But at what point do we decide, or is it decided that if somebody's got a rating of poor or very poor or a high risk rating, do we not take it up? Because there is examples of that, and I just think, what is the point if you're going to do a risk assessment and highlight something that's going to be a poor result? Why carry on? Is it just to say, well, we knew that and we're going to do it anyway, and blah blah blah? You get my point? So it's pertinent to everything, really.
Yes. Who would like to answer that?
I guess that's for each individual service. If they conduct an impact assessment on proposed savings, the first thing I'd say that if a service is putting savings forward, then you'd expect those to be deliverable. Obviously, if they then apply an impact assessment to them, and the actual impact comes back as high risk, then you'd expect them to mitigate that risk. If they fail to mitigate the risk, then it's a decision for the service whether they go ahead with it or not. But certainly, you know, I think with the high risk, if there was no element of mitigation, I'd certainly, as a portfolio holder, as part of my service, I'd be very concerned about it.
Okay, I understand that. I don't want to. Well, one example would be the ditching one, where it hadn't been taken up and were bailed out, but it was showing very, very high risk and risk for 5 years going forward. So I just question, you know, why do we do things that we've been told is an impact?
We can drill into those specifics when we move
exactly.
on, Adrian, actually. But just to remind members, actually, the process there, and we've got our work programme before us, haven't we? And we will be looking at the budget draft impact assessments for the services covered by ERC. So I suppose there is opportunity for us as scrutiny members to raise concerns in that instance, Councillor Adrian, and I should imagine really that is our job to do so. But yes, at the end of the day, as Councillor David says, it's down to the officers and portfolio holders to make the decision on whether they're happy with that level of risk. I suppose that's the process, isn't it? Diane, did you want to add some further explanation to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, obviously, we are given the challenge by Cabinet each year to the budget we need to work towards and put the plans in place for that. We make the proposals, but don't make the decisions. And the proposals are based, and the impact of those proposals are presented in front of all of you at the budget decision process. So I think, you know, over the years, all of the low impact savings have been taken, you know, and we are getting to that point, aren't we, where we are getting up to the medium high impact. And unfortunately, you know, for us to be able to bring back no impact or low impact saving is a near impossibility. So, and that's all through the debate of the setting the budget. So I kind of just slightly disagree with Councillor Thomas, sorry, that the officers need to decide. I think that's a decision through the budget process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So if there are no further questions on that paper, shall we move on? Because I'm guessing some of the questions are going to be very similar, really, to page 45, and we've got the community wellbeing paper. I can see we've got Jenny with us. She's turned her camera on then. I don't know if Councillor Rafe is here, but members, did you have any questions? Well, Jenny, did you want to highlight anything for us in the paper? The good, the bad, the ugly?
Good morning and thank you, Chair. I will just highlight a few points if that's okay, and then happy to take any questions. So as you can see on page 46, it talks about the amount of savings that are detailed in Appendix A, so 1.4 million. There is just under 50,000 of undelivered savings, and there were reasons for those due to the work with Freedom Leisure on parts of the contract, and variations were not achieved in that year, but have been carried forward to the year after. The assessments is that thankfully there were no impacts in terms of impact assessments on the savings that were made, and those were made within service. They were fairly low level, but we will of course monitor and review those going forwards and escalate as necessary. The savings that we were able to make concerned utilities, a consultancy budget that we had within the service, and as other services do, using grant funding where we possibly can rather than core budgets. You will see there at 3.4, there was an aspiration to sort of reconfigure library provision, but our work with the Sustainable Paris programme didn't allow us to do that specifically in that year, and the saving was made by other means in a one-year saving. And that's probably as much detail for now, unless anybody has any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Yes, Councillor Corinna's got a question.
Apologies, I'm on my phone and I'm
That's all
not
right.
so good with the controls. But I want to ask about your vision for library service in the future. I believe a grant of around 35,000 bailed out, allowed the provision to carry as before this year. But what in future years do you envisage? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Corinna. The grant, I'd need to know exactly which grant you're referring to, as the library service very successfully have a number of grants that help support different aspects of delivery of the service. I'm not sure I would describe it as bailing it out. I think the grant funding helps to support the service delivery so that we can look at the funds that we have available and then deliver services accordingly. We are delivering within budget at the moment, and currently, as I just said previously, we are working with other services and other officers as part of the wider Sustainable Paris programme, and certainly more recently with customer services and digital access, looking at how libraries can help support people in Paris to access services and receive information that that they're hoping to be able to source. So in terms of the vision, the library service currently will continue as it is. We have 14 library buildings, but over time, in the same way as other services do, we will look at how those facilities and the services can be best delivered to meet the needs of people in Paris and the needs that they have.
Are you looking to co-locate the libraries, put them in another building?
There are always opportunities for many services to co-locate, and with pressure with regards to budgets, we have to look at those options from time to time, but currently, I don't have any plans to share. So, all I'd say is that is always an option, and it is something that we will consider if that's felt it is the best opportunity for that area, in Paris or for those facilities.
Okay. Anybody else got some questions for Jenny? So Jenny, I'll just ask you a question. On the Appendix A on page 48, under the reduced leisure management backlog budget, it says not yet, which is the only place it says not yet on these forms. So I'm just wondering, what does not yet mean? It's ongoing?
I think that's the, sorry, Chair, I think that is due to just reviewing the position. So the backlog budget that we had was reduced as part of the saving requirement, and the full impact is yet to be assessed. So we're just monitoring it for now, just to see how that will affect that budget going forward. So at the time we felt, we assessed it and we felt that there was no immediate impact, but we obviously need to do, review that over time.
So this is the no or yes impact is impact on the service or the residents, I guess. So we're saying that do we read into that it might have an impact as it goes forward?
We should probably change that to no for now, because at the moment it is a no, but we will review, we will keep an eye on it going forward.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Peter Lewington.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. On that Appendix A as well, Jenny, could you just explain for me what a consultant's budget policy unit is, please?
Okay,
halfway down the page, yeah.
Yes, no problem at all. So the policy unit is just a historical name for one of the budgets we have in community wellbeing. It's where some central costs are held and some salaries are held. So it's just the name of a budget. So that's the policy unit. But the consultant's budget, again, historically, the service has had some funds that could be available if we needed to do specific pieces of work to help support the service, to perhaps engage consultants in some particular way, and a budget that we could use to, help with research or information or data, for example. So that was a budget that we had within the service, and we've used that to help with the savings target.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So members content? Yes. Okay, we'll move on to the paper on HTR. Councillor Jackie's here and Matt is here. I don't know who wants to. John is here. We're well served from HTR. Thank you, team. Who would like to introduce this to us?
I'll introduce the paper quickly, Chair, if that's okay. I mean, it is fairly self-explanatory and it does follow the format that the other papers have followed. I can see that we're probably already going to have some questions about ditching, and obviously we'll take those on. But I would like to say that some of the savings that we have put forward have had no impact, although the impact assessment suggested there may be an impact, but we haven't found there has been a massive impact. I mean, basically the bus fare increase, we've achieved that savings. We did achieve the savings for the ditching budget, but I'm sure John will be able to explain whether that's had an impact or not. I mean, we achieved some of the savings on the cardboard bank removal, and I'm sure we'll have some questions on that. But I think we can probably indicate that was rolled over and has now been completed. So I think those are the sort of the areas that probably people are most interested in. And if John wants to add anything to that or highlight any areas that he thinks are important, then please do, and happy to take questions.
Thank you, Councillor Jackie. John?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think it's been alluded to with the previous papers, gauging the impact. We do make a really, we take our time in assessing the impact. But if you look at the bus fares, for example, we've made the savings, but there were less. When you drill down into the data, you can see that there was overall less fare paying passengers, but an increase in non-fare paying passengers, such as free fare bus pass users. So it's quite a complex picture to sort of take to get an assessment of, and it may not just be related to the impact of rising fares. It could be down to it was a particularly bad weather year in that year. There's lots of variables that we need to take into account. We going on to the ditching budget. That's I think Councillor Peter or Councillor Adrian mentioned.
Councillor Adrian, yeah.
The longer term impact. That's absolutely right. That decision was taken as part of this budget setting round, where there was less ditching. We've now, as a result of the 25-26 budget setting process, had the floor money put back in, where we are now proactively using a lot of that money to do extra ditching to mitigate that impact. So taking on board your point, yes, I think there would have been a longer term impact had we not. Apologies if you can hear some background noise as well. I've got some building work going on in my house, and I don't know whether that's coming through. So there is that was a relatively short-term impact, but clearly trying to keep water off the highway to maintain it and preserve it for as long as we can, there would have been an impact. And going back to Councillor, the final point, the removal of the cardboard banks, that has now been completed, and that savings has been achieved. I think we do focus on the negatives. There was some positive impacts with the feedback we had from Radnorshire, Prestine area around the park night street lighting with the dark skies friendly organisation, where that's contributed and has had a positive impact.
Okay, thank you very much, John. A few hands up here. So Councillor Adrian.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, I'm just a bit concerned about the rolled over savings. I've tied them up there somewhere like 500,000 in HDR. They're rolling over, unachieved. And we had a newsletter came through, didn't we, yesterday from HDR saying they're predicting an overspend of 520,000 this year, up to September. And if cost savings of 274 don't materialise, that'll go up to 700 and something. So it's a bit of a scary picture. So when it said with the impact assessment that ditching was going to be mitigated by some revenue from other areas, I don't know where it was going to come from. So luckily we were bailed out there. So some concerns about the overall budget, really, and as shown with impact assessments. So what's going to happen with the rolled over?
Okay.
Happy to come back, Councillor Angela.
Yeah, please. Yeah, please do, John. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and I think it demonstrates where the service is at the moment. I think for the total, when they rolled over savings and for this year, across the HTR budget is around about £4.5 million, of which we've now achieved around about 83%. So there's some way to go. But I need to remind members that £4 million across the HDR budget is the equivalent of 10% of our entire budget. It is challenging. We are working on them. And I would like to think, like I say, we got to 82% of the budget at this point in the year, and work will continue. It is a challenging picture, and as Diane mentioned, there are no longer any proposals which won't have a challenging negative or impact that are associated with them.
Yeah. No easy wins left.
If only.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Peter Lewington.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, and thanks, John, as well. Just two quick points, if I could, was I guess partly sort of following on from Councillor Adrian's point there. It is do we or could we actually see, as well as all these savings, the other areas where we've perhaps overachieved? Because we're really only getting one side of the picture when we're looking at savings, and there may be other areas, dare I say, car parking, where we've overachieved and we are using that money to try and balance the books. So I don't know if there's a possibility of thinking about including that in future reports. And then just a quick one on the buses. Yeah, sorry. I was just looking at 1, 2, 3, 4. The fifth bullet point there on page 50. It does confirm that the number of fare-paying passengers and fare-paying income did decrease across the period, and so I just wondered, do we then sort of think about reducing bus fares in future? Because obviously, it would be good to get more people onto buses and public transport. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Pete. Yeah, I think it's there's a balance between the financial, the operational detail, and the wider strategic stuff. We are now reporting performance, and that's being scrutinised. So I think there's a lot to be said for that. We can perhaps tease that detail out through our performance reporting. With your points with regards to the bus fares, it's really there's a balance, isn't there, between getting the price point at the appropriate level and being able to support and have sustainable services. I'm not sure whether members are aware now the Welsh Government have introduced the £1 fare across from 5 to 21-year-olds, I believe it is, which will probably help increase people's thought process around using public transport. My daughter is regularly on the bus now, travelling backwards and forwards to Cardiff. So I think there are small shoots of growth happening across the piece. It was alluded to earlier around the integration between train, etc., in the economy paper, and that all forms part of it. I think it's a long-term, it's a longer-term aspiration. Getting that pricing point right is the challenge.
Okay, Councillor Pete. Yeah, Councillor Sean.
Thank you, Chair, and hi, John. I've got a question around the bus fares as well, and I note that I note the comment that you made about this being quite a complex picture in terms of analysing precisely why there was a decrease in fare-paying passengers, and it wasn't necessarily always to do with the fare. And I absolutely recognise the position the council's in, where it's now becoming almost impossible to come up with savings that don't have some sort of impact on residents. But I think it is really important as we move into this, this new future that we're in, that we don't say that there's no impact when in fact we're not sure whether there's been an impact. And if we think there might have been an impact, we need to find a way of showing that. Maybe something slightly more complex than a simple yes/no column, So in terms of this particular potential impact on passengers, where we're saying no impact, are we actually saying no impact on the service budget rather than no impact on people? And if so, we need to make a distinction, I think, so that people can see when we say no impact, we aren't saying that we don't think or that we're certain that there was no impact on people in terms of fare-paying passengers. I know that there was a rise in people using concessionary fares, and I'm wondering, is that, I'm assuming not, but just so I'm sure, I'm assuming that the rise in concessionary fare paying passengers wasn't completely equal and didn't absolutely negate the reduction in full fare paying passengers. So it's not nice and neat like that to say, well, yeah, we lost the full this number of full fare paying passengers, but actually that was completely balanced out by the increase in concessionary fares. I take it it's a little bit more nuanced than that. So yeah, just really the two key questions are, when we're saying no impact, are we just talking about no impact on the budget because you managed to make the saving, or are we saying there's no impact on people? And if the latter, then should we be saying that when actually the complexity of the matter indicates that we can't really be sure?
Thanks, Councillor Sean. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's really difficult to. You're right. There was no impact on the budget. There was clearly an impact on fare-paying passengers for a reason, whether that was because we increased the fares or for other reasons. Like I say, whether the weather was particularly bad, and it doesn't just apply to bus fares. It could apply to car parking fares. Car parking income goes up and down with. It's quite seasonal. The seasonality, and of course, is weather dependent as well. So I think there's something for us to take from your points there around about assessing the impact on the service budget, which are critically important, but equally and probably more important is the impact is having on residents and our communities, that we need to perhaps have a bit more of a think about.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Gary.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, John. I pick up on the grass cutting one quickly. It was one of those that seems to be sort of tied up in contractual issues. So I don't need to go into that into too much detail, but we do know from the evidence that 2 cuts is the optimum in terms of carbon, nature, biodiversity, all of that sort of stuff. So just a nudge to try and get your team to have that time to look at those contracts and see when some expire, that you can begin to amend them, because I guess they're not all one blanket contract across the authority, because I'm pretty sure it doesn't operate like that. And obviously some of it we do in-house. So I'm assuming we can make some in-house potential savings out of contracts with all of the verges work we was doing. So that was one. And then just, unless my maths is really poor, the totals definitely don't add up in your appendix. The savings carried forward, if you like, is 839,690, not 300 odd thousand that it says in there. So I think if we've done it manually, it hasn't just quite added up.
Thanks, Councillor. And I'm sorry, just looking at the numbers now. Sorry.
I think we're all quickly scrolling down, aren't we, doing our maths in our head?
I definitely didn't do it in my head. It would be even worse. But yeah, I think just depending on how you look at it, isn't it, that even if you just take the projected savings and the achieved, doesn't work. And if you add up the written off ones, that total is the bit that's wrong. Oh, sorry, no, actually, am I reading it wrong? So there is a carried forward and a written off. Sorry, that's my mistake. Those two do add up.
There we are. So
Yeah,
note
there's
to
an extra
note to selves there. Double check our adding up, whoever we are.
Check our own. Yeah, that's fine. Thank
That's
you.
fair
Sorry.
enough. But thank you, Gary. Thank you. Councillor Sean, you put your hand back up. Did you want to come back in after John had answered your previous question?
Kind of, just really, it's a different subject, but with the same point, which is the reduced drain clearance, which is just, you know, just very quickly, because you don't need to come back on it. It's just really to say again, I'm not seeking for us to be able to say there's no impact when I think we need to be honest when there is an impact as we move into the into the situation that we're in, where all savings are almost certainly going to have some sort of impact. It's just about reporting that impact accurately, and it was the same with the reduced drain clearance as it is with the bus fares, really, where it looks like the no impact is to the service budget, when in fact, you know, that the increase in flooding and the increase in surface erosion that's noted as a risk and an impact, it does have an impact on residents, doesn't it? Of course it does. So it's just really to note that in our reporting.
Yeah, I think what we can do, Sean, at the end of this, we've got the PPs to go yet, is we could make a recommendation based on those for all of them, because the same principle applies, doesn't it, there? Okay, thank you. Councillor Gary, did you want to come back on your question?
No, I don't think so. I'm sure John and the team have got that contractual issue around verges underhand, but I think it's one that clearly could save us some money. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I've got Councillor Pete Lewington, but I've got Councillor Jackie with a hand up. Did you want to come in at that point, Jackie?
But I wanted to come in really just to remind everybody this is 24-25 budget, and you know, we have taken note of all of these issues here in reaching decisions about coming forward for the next budget round. So just wanted to make that point really, that it's important to realise that, and so some of the savings that have been rolled over, they've been accounted for in different ways, not to go into today, but just to say that they've all been notified or all been noted, and we're looking at those in ways that we can make sure that we don't have another rolled over savings next year for the same item, because some of these are historical rolls over. I just wanted to come back as well on Councillor Sean's point about the impact assessments, and the impact assessments that we do are in relation to the budget and what the impact is on the budget as much as what the impact and risk is on individuals. And so, you know, we do need to look at that. But when we look at the risk assessment, I think we do look more we do think about what the risk is to residents much more than we do in the impact assessments that go alongside budgets. So I don't know whether we need to think how we might want to align those two things so that they're better understood, because they're reported in different ways and we assess them in different ways. So bringing those two things together, I think, would be really important. And then coming back to the bus fares, just to reiterate really what John's saying, it is complex, but we don't lose money through the concessionary fares. So every passenger is actually paying for their seat. But, you know, we do need to make sure that we're actually putting a service out there which is enabling people to go to work, go to school, pay that, you know, that don't get concessionary fares. And I think the new bus contracts that we put in just this September will actually provide us with, I think, some more assessment that we can do around what we're delivering and whether that is actually delivering for the residents of Powys, not just those with concessionary passes, which we may have been doing really in the previous contracts. So I just wanted to make those several points there, but coming back on what people have been asking. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. That's helpful, Councillor Jackie. Councillor Peter Lewington.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Jackie, for that. I was just having a bit of a radical musing this time, actually, Chair. Just back on the bus fares and that, and looking at the 2 years we've got there, is if and I hope my calculator's as good as Gary's, if not better. But just dividing the fares by the number of passengers, it sort of simplistically comes out at around about a £2 fare for the 2 years that we're looking at. So I just wondered if it could be something for John and the team to consider, whether just a flat £2 fee may not deter concessionary payers, but it could increase fare payers, and it would make the whole system easier. And if we kept the same number of passengers, which again I noticed they've gone up a bit there, it may actually lead to increased income. So just a thought, Chair.
Would that be £2 regardless where you go?
Yeah.
How many? Yeah.
Well, look at sorry to interrupt. Yeah, just looking at those simple numbers there, dividing the income by the number of passengers, it's around about £2 a passenger.
I suspect the people who do a very short bus, I don't know how much a short bus journey costs. John, how much is a short bus journey?
Thank you for putting me on the spot there, Councillor. Off the top of my head, it's around, I think the minimum fare is around about £1.30. That's the minimum you could charge.
So I suppose that might put them off if they had to pay £2. But yeah, it's an idea, isn't it? Something to consider. Yeah. Councillor Peter James. Oh, sorry. Yes, Peter James. Sorry. Yes. You're nodding at me.
No problem. No problem. I'm just interested with the parking fees. Is there any working paper from Powys on how the charges are affecting local businesses or not? And is there any analytic side of seeing how people are changing to probably shop out of county because of lower charges of parking?
Thanks. Chair, if happy for me to respond?
Yeah, please do, John. Yeah, sorry.
When we did the car parking review last year, we engaged colleagues from Aberystwyth University, and they're quite well versed in this space. Lots of the academic research, there didn't appear to be much correlation between footfall on the high street and car parking charges. It's probably more around the offer rather than the thought of pay. If I try and refer to myself as a typical person, when I go away for the day, I don't necessarily think I'm not going to go to Aberystwyth because it's going to cost me £4 to park there, for example. I tend to go there because I want to go to the seaside. And that's kind of what the research was suggesting. There is a perception that it does have an impact. And the Welsh Government did some, I think the research is about 2015-16 on this. Again, they found that there was little correlation between footfall and car parking fees. So taking on board your point, it's that balance, isn't it, between what we need to generate as an income for the council to help. Roughly the car parking income is roughly the equivalent to what we spend on public transport. Probably a little bit what we spend on public transport has gone up now, but those are the types of decisions that we make. There's probably a bit bigger correlation between the public transport offer and car parking charges than the actual car parking charge itself. That said, it's around about perception, and where we have neighbouring authorities that have a different fare structure to ours, that then is used as a sort of mechanism to justify that there's a lower footfall when perhaps people's shopping habits have changed, where we tend to buy more stuff online, or we go to places like Shrewsbury or Merthyr, where it's become more of a shopping destination.
Can I just ask, with the usage of the car parks, are they actually up or down with the usage at the moment? Is there any sort of working paper to see how many people are using the car parks to what the charges used to be to what they are now?
Yes, I haven't got the numbers down, so I'm happy to follow up with the feedback to this session. But in August, we were ahead from where we were last year. And again, that's seasonal. We've had a particularly hot, dry, sunny weather. We've introduced the car parking charges for blue badges, and of course, we've introduced the mobile app to pay for your car park, and that they all may have had an impact on car parking revenue. But when I looked at it in August, we were certainly ahead of forecast. So I will provide the most up-to-date answer in a response later to this.
Thank you, John. Thank you for that.
Thank you. So I think we could have guessed that HTR was going to stimulate the most questions. It's a very public-facing service, isn't it? So, Councillor Adrian.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was pleased to hear Councillor Jackie Charlton's comments on the bus fares, because she said we don't want to have a bus service just for concessionary fares, do we? And the impacts assessment did point out that there might be a drop-off in fare-paying people, and it's something I get asked quite often or discussed, is that working people don't find the timetable suiting, and the timetable is changed due to usage. So as long as it's being watched, I am happy to hear. I was happy to hear her comments, because it is continually reviewed, and we don't want we want to encourage people to be using the bus to go to work, and in the future that's the way it should be, for the climate change, etc. So I was very pleased with her comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adrian. Right, I think did you want to add anything, Councillor Jackie? Yeah,
I would do very much so, because Councillor Adrian does make a really important point. And just to say, with the new bus contracts, what we have done is that we've listened to people, and we've had a lot of feedback in from people, and in a lot of cases we've been able to just tweak the timetables slightly to suit not individuals' needs, but certain needs. And I think we will continue to do that. And because our contracts are flexible now, they haven't been flexible before, but because they are flexible now, we can continue to do that. So it's an ever-changing process, really. But if people come in and if they want to give us information, we will do our level best to tweak the timetables to suit certain things, so it meets up with the other services as well. We keep in touch with Transport for Wales, and we are lobbying them quite hard for areas that we've not been able to have any influence on, which is Brecon to Cardiff, which has now broken the journey. It always used to be one journey. We're trying really hard to see if we can get that back again. So any feedback that you have, please do keep it coming in. Our transport team are very, very flexible, and they have shown that flexibility over the last couple of months since the new bus contracts have come in. But just to say that, they are flexible now, and we are in a position to make changes where we think they are appropriate. So thank you for that, Councillor Adrian.
Thank you, Councillor Sean. I can see you've got your hand up. I'm going to ask you to be very brief now, because we do need to move on to the next paper, and we have got another agenda item as well, but I'll allow you to come back. It's good that you're so enthusiastic. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for that, for your indulgence, Chair. It's just a broad point, and it doesn't require an answer, really. Just putting it in there as something maybe to consider in future. And this doesn't apply just to HTR, it applies to a range of different savings that we make. The school meals one is going to be mentioned in the next paper, isn't it? So really just the broad point is we do have a responsibility, don't we, under the socio-economic duty to really have a good idea, or try to have a good idea about what the impact is of things that we do and decisions we make is going to be on people on low incomes who struggle with the low income. And
So I'm going to stop you there, because you've mentioned the impact assessments and we've said that we're going to put something in our recommendation. So this comment that you're making, I think, needs to go at the end of this paper. So I'm going to move us on with your permission to the next paper, which is the public protection planning, etc. And Gwilym is waiting patiently. So thank you, Gwilym, for coming in to introduce this paper for us.
Thank you, Chair. I'll concentrate on a number of the savings proposals within the Appendix A, which is on page 60. In relation to the property savings, we have undertaken a restructure of the property team, and that has now been implemented. But what this doesn't explain is that we've also added a pressure, which is a new officer joining the team for renewable energy, which has been of great benefit and addresses the need of the authority at the moment, and will hopefully secure in excess of £200,000 worth of savings going forward. So we are constantly reviewing each structure to make sure it's fit for purpose. And since those savings, we have, as I said, added additional posts, which is securing the savings. In relation to the Park Office, which those savings were unable to be achieved because we had to undertake works to the building itself. So we only achieved part year, but now they have been implemented in full, the works, and we expect full year savings. Income depends on our demand. If we increase the prices, demand unfortunately can reduce. We did secure most of it, but there was some outstanding £32,000 from a 10% increase in fees. And we're also, in addition to that, cemetery fees, which we tried to go towards full cost recovery. There was reduced demand from that, and also trends as people go to crematoriums rather than using our cemeteries. And we have to look at how we can offset those matters. And we have got an increase in catering income coming in. And I think in the long run, given the trends that I don't believe we're going to be able to secure those income targets, we may look at offsetting it using the catering income, which is exceeding targets by significant amounts year on year. In relation to the cleaning of the corporate offices, they have been implemented in full, and we're looking at other proposals now for the corporate offices, as we look to bring it down to an appropriate standard, which still maintains the hygiene levels. With regards to the compliance budget, we are struggling in relation to the compliance as some buildings come online which require more compliance budgets than more modern buildings. I'm afraid you've got a lot more technology and therefore need a lot more income. But what we're trying to do is looking at all the compliance works that we're undertaking and looking to make sure that we are safeguarding the buildings, but bringing it down to the minimum levels required. And again, what we're looking to do there is looking at our other income streams, which are exceeding our trends and offsetting that income going forward. So we look to be breaking even, if not in a better position from a planning and regulatory services perspective. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Gwilym. So, councillors, any questions on these? Well, you all have a little bit of a think. I'm just going to ask you a question, as you brought it up, Gwilym, on the burial fees. Do we know, are churchyard burials a similar price? Have we benchmarked our fees?
We haven't benchmarked against our churches. What we have done is benchmark it against other authorities.
Right.
And we are within the top 3 in relation to Wales, if not, because they change quite regularly. So I can't guarantee, but we are in the top percentile there. And
as in most expensive.
Most expensive.
So not a good place to be necessarily.
We didn't increase it in last year in order to see how the trend will go, whether we'll become more competitive. But the trend, unfortunately, is showing that we're not achieving a break-even point from an income perspective.
I mean, I totally get your point. There are green burials and cremations and other options, just like there are, I suppose, for weddings. But I'm just wondering if ours is cost recovery, that's what it costs, would the cost be higher? Is there anything that a council has to do differently to a churchyard? Like, are the rules or regulations different, or?
No, not generally. They aren't different there. So no, there's no real
So
difference.
it's the same rules and regulations and how deep you dig it and all the rest.
Yeah, and the health and
Yeah.
safety issues would apply throughout.
So it would be interesting to benchmark against churches to see if they're cheaper. How do they do it cheaper? You know what? Yeah, maybe. I can see Councillor Richard Church has got his hand up. Did you want to comment on that? I didn't want to labour the point too deeply at this.
No, I just wanted to say that I mean I think you're demonstrating that burials, cremations, etc. is a competitive market. You know, it is a market, very much so. And I think we have to look at growing trends. It's not just a question of whether you're going to be buried in one of our cemeteries or in a churchyard, but whether you are going to choose cremation as alternative, as more and more people I think are, and very low cost cremations as well. And I think, you know, we need to consider the rapid, you know, changing trends in the whole process of what happens to our remains after we die. And I think we have to watch that quite closely going forward.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Richard. Okay, we'll move on. Councillor Peter Lewington.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a quick question, Gwilym, around the income lines. Whereas you quite rightly say the income's dependent on demand for services. I guess we don't do any marketing for the services or anything at all like that. We're just solely reliant upon somebody coming to us because they want that service.
Yes. And we've got different kind of departments in there. Some of the income lines there, for example, building control. We do marketing for that service. And generally they're very healthy in relation to the building control. And we're very competitive. But others, it does rely upon we're often the sole provider of a certain service, and it depends on people coming to us and utilising those services. And what we're finding is the cost of living issues are impacting upon the demand in some cases.
Yeah, I guess very difficult one to budget for because the demand's so.
Yeah, and sorry, just to add in relation to income, some of these ones going forward, you will see the Welsh Government have released or going to increase the planning fees. But it's although people they increase it by potentially 50% or around that area, we don't know what the demand will be, whether that will have a decrease in demand. So it's a lot of these you have to monitor trends over the years and see how they do progress.
Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Peter James.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions, Gwilym. One on licence fees. The licence fees, past history used to be carried out by the courts, and I think it was £36 for 3 years, and now the licence fee is about £98 per year. That's a very big increase on local businesses that are struggling as well. And the other one was for the second question is the shortage of EHOs, and are we actually bringing in freelance environmental officers in, or are we paying other councils to fill in the shortfalls of environmental officers, because we are sort of struggling a bit? And is the pressures being put on the environmental officers with the grading system and a time lapse on actually supplying or actually getting out to businesses to actually grade them? So they are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. In relation to licensing fees, they're often set by the cost of delivering the service, and they'll often be agreed every year, depending upon on the cost of delivering them. with the in relation to the environmental health officers, we went through a stage over the last few years where we haven't been at full capacity, but we have actually been relatively lucky recently in the fact that we've been able to fill some difficult to fill posts, senior posts, but that was by recruiting from other authorities. And we've also been able to, via certain other grants, been able to have some graduates that come us, which have then been able to fill in other posts. But certain funding has been removed by certain governments, and funding those graduates is proving harder. But we have got one graduate in place at the moment, which will help fill in certain posts. But that said, competency levels are very. It takes years to get to certain competency levels to be able to deliver the work. So even if we do have a graduate, it doesn't mean that they can fill in the vacant posts. And unfortunately, we have lost an environmental health officers to the Food Standards Agency, our regulator on certain matters. And that environmental health officer is going to be very difficult to fill. As I said, we have been able to grasp other officers from other authorities, but there's only a certain supply. And that supply is limited, and that has been acknowledged by the Welsh Government. With regard to grading, over the COVID years, we have did regrade, and the grades went up, which put us into a more competitive field with other authorities, and hence why we've been able to attract. So at the moment, that is positive, but we are losing some environmental health officers to other organisations because they're attracted, Health and Safety Executive, for example, Food Standards Agency, Welsh Government, they're all trying to recruit from the same pool. So so we have unfortunately lost some there.
So are we doing our own officers within county?
We are trying to grow our own through posts. It's a balance. We always want to grow our own and have graduate posts, but we have to acknowledge that we'll be putting money into those graduate posts. Potentially that can't contribute towards some of the statutory work that we have to do. So it's whether we try to recruit a fully qualified person who can get on and do the work, or grow our own graduate, but maybe not be able to complete most of the or part of the statutory work that we're required to do. So it's having that balance. But we always try to grow our own, and that's throughout the whole public protection and planning area.
Okay, thank you, Gwilym.
Well, thank you for that, Gwilym. I don't want us to continue digging too deep into the service areas, but within your whole budget range there, just as Councillor Jackie did, is there anything that really concerns you, or have you got some confidence that those rollovers have been met or are continuing to be met or will be met?
Those carried forward have been met now already this year. This income ones, as I think we'd have to offset that with other income which are above trend, and that is something that I'm trying to do now, and we'll be looking to do violence in acknowledgement that we won't be able to increase the income.
Yeah. Okay. So within your service area, it's not achieving those incomes is going to be the biggest challenge for you going forward, really. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much for that. I'm going to round this up now and bring us round to some recommendations before we go on to item 8. So members, if I read out some suggested recommendations for you, and if you're happy to approve those, just bring my list up. Okay, so you've come up with some really good stuff there, so thank you. But how about that future savings reports include information on areas where financial performance has exceeded expectations? For example, overachievement, in addition to detailing the savings and the shortfalls. That's one. That future reports include more detailed impact assessments using clearer categories or notes instead of just yes or no answers. So especially when the impact is uncertain or mixed, and this would help give a fuller picture on how savings affect residents. So hopefully that will meet Councillor Sharn's concerns. That future reports clearly show when budget savings have an impact on services or residents, rather than suggesting that there is none, and highlighting what those are. And Jackie's suggestion really, or based on Jackie's comments, clarify the distinction between the budget impact and the residents impact, and explore how the reporting mechanisms of risk and impact could be better aligned. And then lastly, that benchmarking be carried out against church venues to explore whether they deliver services at a lower cost and to identify any practice or efficiencies that could inform future savings for service delivery improvements. And I suppose that could apply to all those services really, not just church, but I don't know, do other organisations, Peter mentioned licensing, can you go elsewhere, or is that just something for the local authority? But anyway, members, are you happy with their recommendations on those lines and happy for Gemma to formulate them into lovely words? Yeah, can we have a show of hands?
Sorry, Chair, just before we go to the vote.
Yes, Peter, sorry, I've covered up the hands.
Yeah, no worries. I was just thinking on those other 2 points about whether we would like to have overachievements in future reports as well as savings.
Yes.
And then whether it's appropriate to just put in a comment around considering a flat fee. I can't say it now. A flat fee for bus fares.
Yeah, we could ask for that to be looked at. Everybody happy with that? Okay, yeah. Should we have a show of hands for the records? Lovely. Thank you very much, members. And thank you to all the officers and portfolio holders for bringing those papers to us. I mean, it's clear that an awful lot of work is going on and it is a very challenging situation going forward. I think something to highlight is the amount of times that grant funding was mentioned. And I think we probably all need to be aware that that may or may not be as easy to obtain in the future. And that will add another challenge to our officers. But thank you all for all the work you've been doing there. And I'm going to move us on now to item number 8, the economic development and growth Q2 performance. We've got Matt with us at the moment to do the introduction, and then Matt, I'm aware you've got to drop off. So thank you very much. And sorry you've had to wait so long, but we've had quite a robust session, I think, today.
That's okay, and thank you, Chair, and thank you, members. So this is the Q2 performance report. You'll be aware we brought the Q1 performance report in a few weeks ago, and the intention is to make this as open and transparent for you to challenge us within the department on progress. So the intention today is hopefully this is clearer than the information in Q1. There's still a lot of information that we need to bring to you during Q3 and 4. So this is sort of in development essentially, but we want to look at things like sickness stats, training stats, all things that the services are striving to achieve as best as possible. So we will improve, and we do welcome your recommendations on how we can improve it. So if it's okay, Chair, that each head of service now will run through each of their areas. So Dan will cover economy first. Andy then will cover housing, and then John on HTR, and then Willem will cover planning and regulatory services. So thank you, Chair.
Lovely, thank you. So where are we going first?
Hi, Chair. That would be me. Sorry, again, still no camera, I'm afraid, but I am still here. The voice.
Welcome.
Yeah, floating underneath us. So I still am here. But there, I think it's page 65. If
yeah,
if that will help. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So, and thank you, Matt, for the introduction also. So, okay, thanks, everyone. Yeah, just to go through. So, in terms of the measures here, there's 3 in relation to the economy and climate service. I'll just run through those quickly with you. So, 281, number of business days to turn around planning applications for economic developments, acceleration of the process. So, actually, whilst you can see the actual figure is 0, the target is 40, and the status is on track. I appreciate that there's no data there, but actually there's been some significant acceleration on this. I just haven't got the figures there to report back yet, but we have actually set up a working group within the officer teams to identify where those blockages are, and there are now projects coming forward. So I should say that the work is on that underway, and there will be an update on that reported back, so that is in hand. Number of tourism infrastructure projects completed, again, a target of well, 0 there actually. Sorry, that's incorrect. It should actually read target of 6 as well. So that they're underway. They're being taken as being completed as we speak. So again, they're due to be finished by the end of the financial year. And then the final one is number of collaborative projects completed, tourism, asset development. Again, sorry, this the target is 1 here, and that is certainly around the I think you may have seen recently the press coverage on the Marches tourism events, for example, is taking place, as well as some of the growth deals. So I'm confident that will be addressed. And actually, I think realistically, the target should have been far more ambitious than 1. So.
Okay. Councillor Corinna, would you like to come in there with a question?
Thanks. Yes, just wanted to know what the 6 tourism infrastructure projects
Okay.
are.
Yeah, thank you. So we've actually got the 4 of those are linked to the toilets funds that's been funded as part of the project. So we've got those in there, as well as other projects linked to some of the brilliant basics that's being delivered by Visit Wales. But actually, I think, Councillor Corinna, we've had conversations around what's happening on Office Dyke, for example, as part of the Marches programme. And you've seen there has been some press coverage on that today. So I'm pleased to say that we'll be including, all being well, elements of that into it also.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Peter Lewington.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just a quick one, Dan, on that tourism project. I've sort of got slightly confused because over in the commentary there under 282, it says 6 in 2027.
Yeah, I'll be honest, that's a mistake. I apologise for that, Councillor. That was that's a mistake.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Sorry.
No problem.
So it's just some typos, really, is it there?
It
yeah.
is,
Okay.
Chair, correct.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. Well, thank you for explaining those. Okay. Well, no further questions for you, Dan. Thank you very much. So,
thank you.
Do we move on to housing services? Got Andy here with us, I think, is it?
Yep. Hello.
Morning, Andy.
Sorry, all a bit damp in Ceredigion today, and when it does, the internet goes very slow where I live because we are a tad remote. Okay, if I quickly run through the paper you've got in front of you, I'm going to concentrate, if that's okay, Chair, on the reds. The number of, because the others are on track, so please forgive me for doing that. The number of energy performance certificates issued for privately owned homes. We do have a target, but we are very much reliant upon private property owners wanting to take part in these programs, and there does seem to be a bit of a slackening of demand. We're not entirely sure why that is, but there are, as you have seen in the newspapers recently, issues around fires from solar panels that have been incorrectly installed on private properties, and also some concerns about things such as external wall insulation, perhaps causing mold, and a resistance to air source heat pumps, which are not proving to be as efficient as people expected in existing properties. They tend to work best when the property is built around the system, designed rather around the system, a bit like any heating system. You know, a number of older properties are built to have solid fuel because of the airflow that goes through. So we are trying to push for that. The private sector element of energy company obligations is largely unregulated in terms of quality. It's run by the UK government, and we have actually spoken with Welsh government and asked whether or not they could put pressure on the government in Whitehall to perhaps introduce a greater degree of regulation and quality control to give homeowners the assurance that their works will be completed to a high standard, to the sort of standard we did to our council housing. So it is an interesting time. Energy prices are going up, but there does seem to be not quite as much enthusiasm as property owners as they used to be. And I think that's an issue that we can try and push in Paris. We are, as you know, promoting it now with Warm Paris, our new marketing strand. But we do have to take into account the fact that, you know, this is very much a national issue, and there's a lot of conflicting and differing views about things in this area of work, and you know, quality control I do feel needs to be really important. Our role is literally limited in terms of privately owned properties to issuing those declarations. We're not allowed to go and check the quality, because the argument is that the relationship is between the property owner and the contractor doing the works. Warm Wales, agency partner, tries to provide some support and tries to provide some recommendations, but ultimately people can do their own thing. So there is a risk there. I would urge anybody contemplating this works to always check the validity of the person offering the works, and maybe even after some quality control feedback on previous installations. Moving on to heating safety, we always want to get into 100% of our properties. We do have, sadly, people who do refuse access to the home to have this essential work done. We have been without until recently a housing solicitor. Our previous housing solicitor has gone take up a top-notch job at Cardiff, and our previous one took up a top-notch job in Wolverhampton. So we're obviously giving them a good grounding, but they're moving on. And we do rely upon the solicitor to take people to court. We have to get a court order to access somebody's house if they quite bluntly refuse access. We focus very much on the non-access on gas. Gas is the most dangerous. That particular statistic covers all heating systems. So that would include those that are the very few we've got left with solid fuel, those with the oil, those with electric, and those with air source heat pump. But we do focus on the gas because that obviously is the most dangerous. As I say, throughout my career, there's always been a hardcore of people who simply don't let you in. There are some people, you know, they can't get time off work, so we will offer out of hours offers to go and visit with our contractor, Robert Heats Limited. Because, you know, everybody can get time off work, so we try to work with them, and that's very much around there. If I just quickly scroll down, there's no other reds, but you know, I'm pleased to see that we are on track on the majority of statistics there and performance. So, Chair, if that's okay, I'm obviously more than happy to take questions from members.
Okay, I've got a couple of hands up for you there. So, Councillor Corinna, you're first.
Only going to ask
Hiya.
about the amount of monitoring. Thanks very much, Andy. So the grey, the grey sections.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
the
yes.
B&B, people in B&B and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I get weekly reports on that. On that particular, I'm just putting up my document here because I want to look at you. We monitor that because to a certain, you know, we try to report that. I get a weekly update from my team. We do report on that quarterly to the portfolio holder as well. And as you can see there, we don't really set a target for that because we don't know how many people are coming to us as homeless, if you get my drift. So we've got a target, but it's difficult to meet it. So we do monitor all of those statistics, and we're trying to reduce that. Now, what we've got at the moment, we've had a pilot running since July, enhanced homelessness pilot, in which we're focusing much more on prevention, trying to prevent people falling into the situation whereby I'm focusing on the homeless statistics, everybody. These are the ones that go down to 111. I'll cover income in just a moment, sorry. To try and prevent people falling into that area of activity. And it is starting to have some impact as well. The other thing that we're looking at is, and we're in the process of negotiating the purchase of 3 properties so we can run our own bed and breakfast. That will save or bed and breakfast type accommodation. That will not only save cost, but it will be self-contained accommodation. But it also means we can have more prevention and support work, because we do have people who have repeat incidences of homelessness. You know, the bed and breakfast we use is privately run. You know, they're geared up for the holiday market, not for our market. They do a splendid job, I have to say, in difficult circumstances, but we're aware that we need to do our own. So the monitoring is very much around of trying to keep on top of it. As you all know, there's new legislation coming through from the Senate that will increase the obligations on local authorities in Wales to provide services for homeless people. So we'll have to see how that pans out. So there. Moving on to rental income. Rental income, because we have a lot of people, we account for rents weekly, but a lot of people pay monthly, particularly through direct debits. And invariably, the figures don't always balance out until the end of the year when you've had the final direct debits in. Again, as you can see, it's not too far behind target there, you know, the actuals and what have you. My target is 100% of rent income collected. Last year, it was 101% because we actually ate into the arrears from the year before. So I'm quite pleased about that.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, There we are. Okay, that answered your question, did it, Councillor Corinna?
Yeah, thank
You
you.
I'm
did.
rambling on. I'm sorry,
Okay.
Councillor.
No,
Sorry.
that's all right. I'm going to bring in Councillor Adrian.
Thank you, Chair. Andy, I just got a couple of questions on ones 100 and 101.
Hold on, let me just pull them up. Sorry, I'm trying to flash between looking at people and there we go. Okay.
Good news story, really. Since you've taken the work back in-house as such, you're doing the job right. 96% approval of improvements and kitchens, etc., from residents. But why does it drop down to 85% after 12 months?
Right. What we tend to find is that when something's bright and shiny and new, which is when the indicator 100 is undertaken, people are, oh wow, this is great. Then after a year, any glitches that have come out, and most of the major works are, there are issues that come about. We all know ourselves when you've done works. There can be a few glitches that we have to go back on. That sadly affects satisfaction, but also people sometimes, the layout they might have agreed at the time of it isn't the one they want, stuff like that. So it is after. That's why I brought it in, because I said we need to think about. We didn't have a 12-month statistic before. We need to think about what is the longer term impact? What do people want long term? So some people, when we talk about layout, may say they want something. Also, that actually might not work out for you in the long term. So we're trying to get across to that. And also, I wanted to bring that in because although the major programs is we're moving over to in-house team and we are getting more of them in, we're still having to use external contractors. And again, the glitches don't always become apparent until the system has been in use. I know I've done it myself. I plumb something in my own house. There's no leaks on day one, but three weeks later, my wife says, "Oh, that's leaking." So it does happen, I'm afraid. But that's why I wanted to bring in that 12 months, because it's how you live with it. It's not what it's like on day one. It's all shiny, everybody goes. Has this worked out for you, both in terms of the components we're using? Are these the right kitchen units? Has the installation been right? And is the design right? Are the stupid things, are the plug sockets in the right place? Stuff like that.
Okay, thank you.
Lovely. Thank you. Councillor Peter Lewington.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Andy. It's probably a bit of an overarching comment across all of them, Chair, if I may. And something I would find useful is to understand on these measures which ones are like our statutory duties, and whether there might be a way of actually highlighting them. Excuse me, because I guess I would expect if it's a statutory duty, the target should be 100%. And then in those instances where it isn't, if we could have a little bit of commentary, a bit like what Andy's put in there on line 103 about the access, the non-access issue, and a little bit of commentary just to then understand why we're not hitting that statutory target, for want of a better phrase, and what the implications are of not actually hitting that. Do we get fined or whatever?
Oh, okay, right. Okay, there's two strands here. As a landlord, we have statutory duties because we have two strands to the housing service. The work we do, as you know, with our housing portfolio, that's 1 in 10 homes in Powys, so that's the landlord service. And then there's everything else we do. Homelessness, enforcing standards in the private rented sector, things of that nature, and the energy advice and energy efficiency work. So staying with the landlord. As a landlord, we have statutory obligations to meet the Welsh Housing Quality Standard and to make sure that we are compliant with all the regulations relating to things such as heating, servicing, and also, for example, lifts, and also even lifts that we have in some of our. We have very few because we don't have many tower blocks in Powys, but we do have 1 or 2 lifts. So they are statutory obligations that apply to anybody who is renting out properties. Yeah, they don't really have targets as such set by government. We've set our own target of 100% compliance because basically you've got to be compliant, hence the name of the service is called Compliance 100 is what I call it. So we have to meet that. We try to do our best. The implications of not meeting those targets are if you don't keep the properties fit and habitable in a certain standard under the Renting Homes Wales Act, tenants can go to court and withhold their rent. So a property has to be kept fit and habitable. Fit for human habitation is the exact wording in the Act. If we don't keep up with compliance, the risk is that an event could happen, a bad event, and then there's health and safety involved, fire service and other things. So there's no sort of fine, if you wish. It's basically the moral duty that we have to keep our properties as safe as possible, as indeed should anybody renting out properties, to make sure you comply with the law. And indeed, this also applies obviously across commercial things. If we turn to the non-landlord function, we have statutory duties to help people in privately rented accommodation if they have problems with their landlord or with their property. And that means we have to, in certain cases, for example, category 1 hazards, as they're defined in law, take action against the landlord if they don't put the problem right. And in homelessness, that's our biggest area of statutory duty. People who are homeless within the terms of the relevant legislation, and you may recall a few moments ago I mentioned new legislation, have a right to help and assistance from the council. Now, again, there's no fines, there's no sanctions from Welsh Government if we don't do this. But an individual could, for example, apply to shelter to take us to, for help. They could take us to court on their own to see if we are meeting what they consider to be our obligations to them in the light of the legislation. So it's interesting. There are obligations on us, but there's no formal sanctions in legislation along the lines of, you will be fined £1,000 if you don't house a homeless person. Basically, we have to house them, so we do the best we can. I mean, there's an element of subjectivity in a lot of it. Oh, sorry, Councillor, I know I'm rambling on and it's 9 minutes to 12. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to interject there to say that very thing. We've only got 10 minutes left, members.
Sorry.
So with your permission, I'm going to jump us on because I know there are some lines here for HTR, but we've given HTR really a good airing in the previous paper, albeit I know it's slightly different, but the issues are the same, I think, aren't they, John and Jackie? So with your permission, I'm going to move us on to the regulatory services, because I think that's where there's perhaps some more concern where targets are not being met. And then if we've got some time at the end, we'll come back to the HTR, if that's all right, Jackie, because we're just running out of time.
I was just going to say, I really don't think there's anything that we need to discuss there unless members want to, but
Lovely.
just to really emphasise the fact that you will see that it's all green except for one area. So we may not need to spend that much time on it, but I just wanted to put on record, there's been a huge amount of work to get everything green. I know we're focusing on the red, but a huge amount of work to get on everything onto green.
Yes, and that's a very fair comment. Thank you, Councillor Jackie. So, Gwilym, I think we're back with you, aren't we? And whether we can encapsulate this in the few minutes left, because it is really quite important, these services, aren't they?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just focus on maybe a few of the service areas, because as you see, there's 45 measures within my area. Planning performance is doing very well at the moment. The issue we've got there is the time taken to determine planning applications. We're in a better trend at the moment, but we're still working with agents to improve the process and speed up the planning application timeframes. We have had sickness with planning officers, and a built heritage officer is leaving the authority, so we have got some issues there that we need to address, which may impact on performance going forward. Environmental health commercial. You can see there that the higher risk premises for food hygiene are being addressed and meeting standards, but from category C down to E, we aren't meeting the targets set there. We have had an outbreak, and we have had other health and safety issues that we've had to address within this time frame, including a court case that we had to, or court appearance that we've had to address, which has impacted upon performance elements there. Food standards, again with category A's down to C's there, we haven't been achieving all the targets there. We have had a period of sickness for a senior training standards officer there, which has had a real big impact upon performance in relation to that element.
That's a bit ironic, isn't it? A food standards officer has been off work ill.
Yeah.
Let's hope it wasn't food poisoning, but
it
joking aside, no.
But it just shows the resilience, and the fact that we have been trying to get consultants in because we've been unable to recruit to that service areas after multiple timeframes and increasing, but there aren't the consultants out there. The last consultants we were able to get, we had to get from Scotland. that just shows how few there are around the whole country.
And you have really explained to us the complexities of getting for training your own. It just takes too long. So there's challenges on multiple levels there.
It is, but we are trying to train our own, reallocating resources to this statutory function, looking at AI as well to assist the service area. But these things do take time, but we will get there and help us to improve our performance.
Okay, so is there any particular thing within all of this that is a real concern to you? You know, I mean, I'm sure you're concerned about it all if you're not on target, but the sort of the particular thing that you think is going to be more challenging even going forward?
I think it's the food hygiene and food standards that are my biggest concerns, and mainly because there are not the people out there to undertake the work. And it's an exceptionally competitive market to get these people. And as I said, we had to bring someone from Scotland, and it does take years to train people up. We are looking to do that process, and we have had some success, and we are improving year on year, but we're still not where we want to be.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Adrian, have you got a question? You're on mute, Councillor Adrian.
Sorry, Chair. Gwilym, just to clarify, I'm a bit confused on two items. They seem to be the same, but they got different results. 133, 148. One is okay, the other one's terrible. They read as the same thing. Food hygiene, category A.
They're actually different standards.
I see.
One is by food hygiene, which is in relation to the premises, looking at, for example, the cleanliness of the kitchens, those kind of elements. The other's by food standards, which is potentially more about the ingredients being used, allergens, and all those elements. So there are two different tests.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Corinna.
I was just going to say that although there's a lot of red on here, you've actually doubled your targets as far as I can see. You want to do more inspections. It's just you've not quite made those targets. Is that your feeling?
We're very close, and as I said, we've had an outbreak which has taken a significant amount of the resource which would have been targeted to another kind of element which is seen as a higher risk than this work. So I think we're hoping there's no further outbreaks, and I've just tempted fate. I know that, and then resource can be reallocated back to this work plan, and hopefully we can achieve the targets by the end of the year.
Right. Thank you.
Councillor Gary.
Thanks, Chair. Gwilym, mine was actually on one of the green ones. It's target 115, and it's around sort of enforcement, if you like, through planning. I guess my challenge to you will be that the target is investigation within 84 days. That's pretty much 3 months. So what we're saying is an enforcement case comes to the planning department, gets reported, and within 84 days, within 3 months, we should have investigate it, but I'm assuming that's definitely not completion. That basically means we should have looked at it, we should have picked it up, and we should have begun our investigations. So I guess my struggle with it is the target just seems low. If we can't look at an enforcement issue within nearly 3 months and begin the work, and we're losing 20% of them, if you like, I'm not sure I don't know. I guess I don't favour that one being green, and it's probably just because I think the target is too low. And I'm sure you'll say, yeah, we've only got a limited number of enforcement officers and we've got a high number of cases, but if we continually keep it green, we're never going to change that position, are we? And arguably enforcement cases come through either developers not doing what they should be doing or just not going through planning. And the issue is if we don't pick them up, we're just going to get more and more of them. So that's one I'd just like you to consider for future reports, whether the target should be increased and therefore it perhaps changes its colour, or if you've got other ways of mitigating against it to keep it on track.
Chair, have I got time to come back in? Sorry,
yes,
I know it's...
please. Yeah.
The target actually, and this measure is a Welsh Government target and measure, and the 80% target there is what the Welsh Government define as good, and that's the highest standard that they put in on that chart. So we are doing very well in relation to the Welsh Government standards there. I accept we need to continue to improve. What we have done is reallocate or allocate enforcement officers to that area, which a number of years now, or 2 years ago, maybe. And they have made a huge difference. And what we've seen is numbers of enforcement cases drop from about 750 down to 250, around 250, sorry, might be slightly, about 256, I believe. And that's part of an action plan to make it sustainable levels. So what we're looking for then is for that percentage of enforcement investigated to be as close to 100% as we can. We have had sickness, I'm afraid, in that enforcement field, and there's only 2 officers. So if one goes down, we haven't got the resilience there, but we're still showing good performance. And what we're also doing is then we are monitoring time taken to take positive action. Now that can vary significantly depending upon what you're investigating. If you're investigating a property with a house in open countryside against planning applications where there's family living, it could take years to deal with for human rights purposes, against other ones which could be addressed within a couple of days. So it's very difficult to monitor and actually target that positive enforcement action element.
Okay, yeah, no, points taken. I guess that figure of 250 odd still worries me. That's 100 and plus odd cases each per officer, and I'm sure you can't resolve one in 3 days. That's for sure. So I can't see how we're sort of reducing that across a year. But okay, I take your point. It's a Welsh Government target. I still think it's a pretty poor target. If 3 months it takes us to investigate an enforcement issue, maybe we shouldn't just be going with the Welsh Government target. So I guess just consider that. I'm not looking for change. You've clocked my concern with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gary. So I'm aware we're out of time, but if members are happy to stay on, if you've got any further questions, we'll carry on for a few more minutes. I just want to highlight here that actually, although there's an awful lot of red here, there are an awful lot of things on target, given the constraints that Gwilym has there explained. But Gwilym, you've got one here where you've done yourself out. Number 122 is actually on target. Your target is 85, your actual is 85. I'd suggest that's bang on track and should be green. But above that, I just wanted to check the percentage of appeals dismissed. So that's when there's been an enforcement and the organisation or individual has appealed to you, and actually the council has been found to be correct. Have I understood that correctly?
Yeah, if we've refused the plan application and they've appealed or appealed against a condition, for example, and have been correct.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's high above target. So again, within these figures of lots of red, there are a lot of really good points here. And I think that's worth pointing out. But I think possibly if you go through, I think there's another one that is showing as red and is actually green. So I'm sure in your case, I'd be desperate to get those greens up there. So members, any further questions? No. So I just want to thank you all for presenting those figures. And I think the bigger concern, you've highlighted it yourself there, Gwilym, is in the food hygiene sector. And it's clear that we have to think about how we can address that going forward. So members, we need some recommendations. There is some conversation going on in the chat about the figures in one of the previous papers that we were looking at, and that'll be sorted out behind the scenes. So possibly one of our recommendations should be that we politely request that all our officers double check all their figures before the papers come to us, and perhaps double check their rag colouring as well, because it may be that things are in some cases better news than they appear. Councillor Peake, sorry, Lewington.
Okay, no, thank you, Chair. Excuse me again. Yeah, I just wondered if one of our recommendations could be if officers could consider just flagging up which of the measures are statutory, say just with a little S by the side or something. That would be one. And then I know we didn't go into the highways and transport one, but there's just one I just wanted to raise, really just try and illustrate a point. And it's number 306 around the percentage of miscollections, and I guess it's just trying to help to understand what the measure really is, because I don't know the 0.12% that's showing there as an actual. I don't know what that's a percentage of. It is whether there's 5,000 collections a year and it's a percentage of that. And then I don't know if the reported cases are cases that have, say, been reported by individual residents, or if a ward is put together and that's included as just one report of missed collections. Because I know Matt and the team are doing a great job in doing their best, but we've just had a little spate of missed collections in my ward, which makes that 0.12% seem a bit low. So I guess the overarching point was a bit more understanding of the context of what the measurement actually is. Does that make sense, or am I rambling? Sorry.
I think I know what you mean. I'm not sure that this document is the place to put it, but let's have a look.
Right.
Gemma's trying to make sense of what we're saying. So what we've got here, really what we're saying here is these are more actions rather than recommendations, I suppose. But we could list them if you like as a suggested action. Would you like to do that? Does anybody have a recommendation they'd like to put, or are you happy just to put forward some sort of actions or things for the service to think about? No, we don't have a strong view on it. Okay, we don't have to have any recommendations or actions. Okay, is that where we're at? Okay, that's lovely then. Okay, committee. Gemma, do you have everything you need?
Yes, I believe so. So just to clarify, the last couple of points that were raised by Councillor Pete, would you like those listed as actions to go to officers?
Is that, you'd be happy with that, Councillor Pete Lewington?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Gemma. Yeah.
Okay, can I just
Lovely.
have a show of hands from the committee that they're happy with that? So I've got that for the record, please.
Okay, yeah, lovely.
Fab, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. So thank you very much, everybody. Apologies, that's my part that we've run over, but I was really keen to let those questions go ahead. You had some really good questions there for the various services. I want to thank all the directors, portfolio holders and officers for being with us today and for answering as honestly and candidly as they could. And that will bring the meeting to an end. If any members have got any time and would like to spend 5 minutes in reflection at the end of the meeting, please just stay online. And thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just move us into backstage.